All right, boys. So far this year, the federal government has laid off 58,500 employees, but they're not done. The Supreme Court just agreed in an 8-1 decision to give the Trump administration the green light to continue. And there's an estimated another 240,000 layoffs coming in hot. Now, even if you're not a federal government employee, this is going to impact you. Because these federal government employees, guess what they're going to be doing? They're going to be competing for jobs in the market, your job in the market. And in today's video, we're going to break down some of the demographics, some of the numbers of what has already happened and what's going to be happening. Because by the way, the amount of federal employees that are going to be replaced by AI is tremendous. We're talking hundreds of thousands. So we're going to get into the details on that. We're going to get into the details of what skills are important. And also, we're going to talk about some things that you could do now to prepare, because you're probably thinking to yourself, my job's safe. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm the best. Everybody loves me. That, my friends, is very, very risky. And we're going to get into all of it. So again, let's look at this Supreme Court decision. One of the things that I think is interesting on the Supreme Court decision, it's an 8-1 agreement. Essentially, there was a lower court judge that was kind of holding up the DOGE layoffs as unconstitutional. 8 out of 9 justices agreed that it was constitutional, and they basically gave DOGE and the Trump admin and the executive branch the green light to start going through these layoffs. So what are the layoffs that are expected? We're looking at about 107,000 non-defense cuts, 60,000 Department of Defense cuts, and about 80,000 veteran affair cuts, which, by the way, you start looking at the Department of Defense, guys, the future of war, the future of defense is all AI and robotics. There's going to be, I mean, you're already seeing it in Ukraine and Russia. It's drones attacks. You know, the Iron Dome in Israel is all AI automation, shooting down missiles. I mean, man, the old days of trench warfare are over. It's going to be a big freighter ship or drones dropping off hundreds of thousands of robot dogs with flamethrowers attached to their backs. And they're going to be storming your cities. It's going to get freaking crazy. I'm not going to go into the concept of the fourth turning in too much detail here, because I want to stay on topic of the layoffs that are happening and upskilling and whatnot. But the next major war is going to be really crazy. It's going to be really crazy. So we're looking at already 58,000 layoffs, 240,000 more layoffs planned, but it's probably going to be bigger than that. I mean, we're looking at a potential of up to 1.2 million jobs lost when you start looking at contracts that private companies have with the federal government and all their employees once those are lost. And what's going to happen if those private companies lose those government contracts? They're going to have to lay off some of their workforce. They're just not going to have the revenue to compete with it. I mean, we've already seen what happened with USAID earlier this year, and a lot of people lost their government funding. I don't know what the exact number was. I don't have that stat with me, but billions and billions of dollars were, I think it was somewhere around $40 billion, but you can feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. The plan here, which this is pretty shocking, the plan is to replace every 4 jobs with either one new hire or an AI. So you're looking at AI doing the job of 4 men or women. But in our case, guys, we're men, we're leaders, we provide for our households, we demand respect, we really strive to be the best at what we do. So here on this channel, I'm really talking to the fellas here, because I think that we have tremendous stress and pressure to provide. And this is a really stressful time when you start talking about one robot doing the job of 4 of us. It's pretty crazy. So let's talk a little bit more about the AI implementation. So DOGE's aim is to replace 500,000 federal jobs with AI over the next 5 years. 500,000 jobs with AI over the next 5 years, guys. And what's going to happen to all those employees? They're going to go into the workforce and they're going to start competing against you. And again, if this is happening on the federal level, it's happening everywhere. And you know, this is not just speculation. Microsoft has laid off 10% of their workforce over the last 3 months. Amazon has laid off 100,000 workers. They now have more robots in their warehouses than humans. It's happening across the board. All these companies are laying off people. And quite frankly, if you're not good at your job, if you can't really explain what you do well, you probably should be fired. And you may not want to hear that, but that's the reality. We're going to talk a little bit more at the end of the video about how you can remain valuable within your organization or within the marketplace. Because the reality is you might not be in the same place in 5 years that you are now. Probably you won't be. Almost assuredly you will not be. Which I think leaves a lot of opportunity for guys like me and the millennials, Gen Zers, even Gen Xers. We have a unique opportunity here. Gen Xers is going to be a little bit tougher because you're not going to be quite as experienced with the AI and the robotics. Maybe, the older generation is in big trouble, but we're not going to talk about that. You could still adapt, guys. You could still adapt. It's never too late to keep learning. So anyway, back to what we're talking about. 500,000 federal employees replaced with AI. 20 out of 23 federal agencies report 1,200 current and planned AI use cases. So these almost every government agency, almost 24 government agencies already know how they want to implement AI. They just needed to get the unlock. And now the Supreme Court in an 8-1 decision has given them the unlock. So that's going to happen. And by the way, there are going to be problems that arise there. And this, I think, is the biggest theme, I think, on the channel right now is AI is going to be very disruptive. There's going to be lots of problems. We as men have the opportunity to solve problems. And the more problems you're able to solve, the bigger the problems you're able to solve, the more money, the more purpose, the bigger impact you can have. So if you're looking at 1,200 different current and planned AI use cases, that's going to cause a lot of problems, a lot of disruption. That's where we can come in and help solve problems. So what are those tasks? What are some of those use cases? Chatbots and algorithms for repetitive tasks like claim processing. And I think this is the key, guys, is repetitive tasks. Anything that you're doing that's repetitive, like for example, when you wake up and you start looking at your email inbox and there's 50 junk emails or spam emails, that's a repetitive task. How can you use AI to save you time on that? Something to think about. I'm using a program called Streak in my Gmail account to kind of keep that under control. But what else? Drafting emails, summarizing text. By the way, when you look at some of these bills that are getting passed, it's like, I can't imagine being a US congressman and you get like a bill on your desk, or a House of Representatives, you get a bill on your desk that's 1,000 pages long. You're like, we're voting on this in 48 hours. What? I gotta read 1,000 pages. And by the way, the stuff that they have to read is not like easy reading. You're not reading Harry Potter, dude. You're reading like super heavy legal documentation where one word can completely change the context. That sounds terrible to me. But anyway, AI can summarize text. It's going to be used for scheduling and workflow management. That's a huge place where AI is going to take a big role. Record keeping, detecting fraud, managing data. And three of the biggest impacts already are in the Social Security Administration, Veteran Affairs, and the IRS. In fact, 31% of IRS agents have already been laid off. 3,600 IRS auditors have been laid off. That's 31% of IRS auditors. And, look, if there's one thing I think we can all agree on, it's that we don't like IRS auditors. If that means less audits, great. But I don't think that's necessarily what this means. I think it means that you're gonna have a robot doing your audit instead of a human. Regardless, that's 31% of IRS auditors. You know that time you got audited and you were like, I wish death on this dude for making my life miserable? Well, there's a 1 in 3 chance that auditor has gotten fired. So you can at least have pop a little bubbly tonight, knowing that your worst favorite auditor is probably laid off. I came up with that on the fly. I think that's pretty good. At any rate, the IRS plans on cutting 40,000 more employees to implement AI. That's 40% of the workforce, guys. That's insane. That stat is insane. 40%. They are looking at, the IRS is looking at downsizing 40%, which is a big shift from where the Biden administration was a few years ago, where they were planning on hiring 70,000 gun-wielding IRS agents. So Elon and Trump, they're going the opposite direction and laying them off, which, you know, I don't want to get too deep into politics, but my number one issue this last election cycle was we need to reduce spending, we need to reduce waste and fraud. The government and all organizations over time tend to get more bloated, and we need to reduce the bloat. We need to reduce the bloat. Whether or not they're successful in that or not, we'll see. But that's kind of my number one issue, is how do we streamline government operations, because they're just, organizations get bloated over time. I read a book a few years called Predictable Success, and it goes into the life cycle of businesses, and I think it applies to government too, because essentially, again, what happens over time is any organization gets bloated and bureaucratic, and things don't run smoothly or efficiently. Okay, who's getting laid off though? Let's talk about that. Who are the people that are getting laid off? Are you in this potential demographic? Let's talk about demographics. So this is interesting. The salaries range pretty wildly, and you know, from initial reading, it appeared to me that it's basically like the newer interns that are getting laid off. You know, the guys and girls that are just doing like basic work. But this goes all the way up to GS-15s. You're looking at anyone from GS-1 to GS-15s, everything from salaries of $26,000 to $190,000 a year. So you're looking at top dogs getting laid off here. And the average age of a laid off employee, get this, 47 and a half. To be exact, 47.2. The average age of layoffs of federal employees, 47. Can you imagine being 47? You've been working in your career for 20 years and you get laid off? Guys, that's a reality that we have to cope with now, because at this point in time, you have an opportunity to be prepared. Once you get laid off, it's going to be a lot harder, because again, you're competing against a much bigger market. And then look at this, 28% of the laid off workers are over 55. 28% over 55. You know, and we're living in a world now where, you know, people are living longer. Inflation is eating up your retirement account. It's kind of a tough time to just say, okay, I'm 55, I'm just going to retire. You're going to need, you know, not only is it going to be tough because of the financial pressures, inflation, your retirement fund being worth less, living longer, increasing cost of healthcare, all that stuff. But we also need to have purpose and meaning. You don't want to be retiring at age 55 and like, well, okay, what do I do now? We need purpose, we need meaning, because without providing for our families, you're going to lose the respect of your wife, and we don't want that. We do not want to lose the respect of our wives. That is, you lose the respect of your wife, then it's a downward spiral from there. I refuse. Okay, you need to upskill. This brings us, if I haven't painted a picture, I don't want to say that it's all bleak, because again, and this is what I hope you gain from this channel, is there are immense challenges, immense pressures, immense problems. There is chaos already here, and it is only going to get more chaotic. But guys, this is where the opportunities are. This is where the chance to upskill and level up is. There are layoffs across all industries, which is increasing competition. And a lot of these AI-driven roles require a new skill set, okay? And I think the way that I'm assessing this is, what are the repetitive, this is my recommendation here, okay, guys, from Mark. This is what I'm doing. Look at the repetitive tasks you're doing in your job right now. What are the tasks in my job that are repetitive and don't require a ton of focus, but I have to get them done? And I mentioned a good thing today. Like when I wake up, when I get to the office in the morning, when I pop open my computer and I'm looking, what are the things that I have to do there? I probably have to spend 30 minutes doing what? Looking at my schedule for the day, reading emails, putting half of them into the spam folder, responding here, responding there. That's a place where you can just implement AI immediately. And if you're like, well, Mark, I don't know how. Have you not heard what I've been talking about? Have you not been listening? Have you not been looking at the stats, guys? This is not the time to get sleepy and comfortable. This is the time to get hungry and maybe scared. Maybe scared. Again, on this channel, and by the way, if you're enjoying this video, smash the like, subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell. On this channel, my goal is to A, wake you up to what's happening, but more importantly, B, is to give you some perspective on some things that you can do to take advantage of the opportunities. To, as Warren Buffett says, when people are fearful, be greedy. Because there's a lot of people that are fearful, which makes which turns this into a good time to be greedy. But you're not going to be able to be greedy just sitting on the sideline. You're going to have to take some action, okay? So assess the repetitive jobs and your skills. And then figure out, where do I need to improve, right? I can start implementing AI and automation, but where do I actually need to improve? And how do you do that? You talk to your colleagues, you talk to your clients, you talk to your boss, okay? All these things I think are vitally important, and start looking to solve problems, because just as nervous as you are, everybody is nervous like that. So start finding ways that you can provide more value and learning more. And again, leveraging AI. In my opinion, the most important thing you're going to need to put on your resume in the coming years is AI proficient, AI enabled, AI powered, and be very specific about what you can do. One of the things that Elon did when he first got into DOGE was he sent out a memo to all government employees. By the end of the week, I need you to write me a summary of what you do. And a lot of people were angry, like, oh, who is he? Why should I tell Elon what I do? I think this inspired me, and I do this every month with my clients. I'll send them a memo. These are all the tasks that I and my team have performed for you this month, and then attached with the invoice. And I would challenge you to do the same, not necessarily send this, but as an exercise, you could do that today. And maybe write in the comments below if you find this helpful. Take a few moments, take 10 minutes today, and just write down a list of all the things that you do, okay? And then what you're gonna wanna do is look at them and say, is there a way that I could do this better, more efficiently? Could I hire someone to help me with this? Or more importantly, how could I leverage AI to automate some of these tasks, okay? Or to speed up these tasks. And like anything in life, it'll take there's a little bit of learning curve, but once you get some juices flowing, it just comes faster and faster. And again, if there's something that you're doing now in your job, if you've gone through an exercise like that, I'd love to hear about it, guys, because that, and if you give a good idea, I will pin you in the comments. I will pin it. I've done it in the past. I will do it in the future. If you leave a really well thought out, valuable comment, I will take down my newsletter link and I'll put your link up there to pin, because we're here to learn together, okay? And quite frankly, I want to learn. Selfishly, I want to learn and get better. Now's the time. The other thing that I think that you should and can, and I am doing, is build. And I'm a huge fan of Replit. I need to get an affiliate link because I talk about this in basically every video. But Replit essentially is an AI code writer. It allows you to develop your own websites, your own SaaS products using AI. And I'll put a link to a video up here about how you can kind of build your own minimum viable product SaaS products. Because to be honest, within Replit, if you're not a coder, if you're not a software architect or a web developer, it's going to be difficult for you to build out like a fully functioning, fully fleshed out software. But what you can do is you can I built out a software that's pretty functional for $50. It needs some work. I'm working on it. But at any rate, you can build out these minimum viable products for $100, and you can start to test these different solutions. And once you find something that works, you go out and you hire a software engineer, which costs a lot less now because of AI, and you can start to really build out some softwares. And why am I talking about this? Because you might be like, Mark, I don't want to open my own business. I don't want to be a software developer. Well, it's because in the process of building, you learn. I talked about this in a previous video. I took Spanish in basically for like 10 years of schooling, and I didn't learn how to speak it at all. I knew like a few vocab words, but a month, 2 weeks working in a kitchen with some Spanish cooks, and I was oblaying Espanol all over the place. So I think that's maybe not the best example, but the reality is if you're actually practicing and touching and tasting and building, you're going to learn these skills a lot faster. You're going to be able to speak the language a lot faster. You're going to have a deeper understanding. And it doesn't take a lot, when you're at home relaxing for 2 hours a night, Just pop open the laptop and start playing for 30 minutes to an hour, spending time with your wife while also upskilling. It costs you almost nothing to do that. And my final point here is to experiment often, which is kind of along the lines of that. Now, the US government, for what it's worth, is giving resources, stuff like unemployment benefits, retraining programs like Career Pivot Boot Camp. The US Department of Labor has the Rapid Response Service. There are various online courses that you can take, which I'm probably going to actually do a Replit course here in the future, but right now I'm just too busy with other clients and I'm just too busy learning, but we'll see what I end up doing there. And you work on your high-tech skills. I'm not going to do this, but you can learn how to code with Python, SQL. AI is where my money's at. I'm just going to become the best that I can be with AI and integrating that into my workflows, listening to your comments, implementing those ideas, relaying those ideas right back to you and the other followers here. Learning soft skills like project management, communication, certifications in Google Data Analytics, Amazon Web Services certifications. There's a bunch of different certifications you can get as well if you want to go that route. But here's one of the things I want to address specifically the older guys that are watching, the guys that are, we'll say 35 plus, or maybe, millennials plus, okay? We have the benefit of growing up in not just a digital world, but an analog world. And growing up in that analog world, there's certain benefits that we have. One of which is we grew up looking people in the eye, shaking hands. We spent more time outside. We didn't grow up with a tablet in our hands. And that is going to give you some soft communication skills that you can leverage and lean into. Now, this is not an excuse to forego your obligation to actually learn the tech and learn the skills that we didn't grow up with. But it does give you a unique competitive advantage when it comes to, I meet someone in person, I give a firm handshake, I look them in the eye. I'm not saying that you youngsters aren't going to have that, but when you grow up, in your formative years, having to do this, it's going to be a little bit more deeply ingrained, and we can leverage that as a competitive advantage. So, at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this doesn't get you down. Yesterday I talked a lot about how social media is being completely overrun with bots. I give a lot of specific examples. We look at some specific data. I think it might be one of my best videos that I've recorded. It's just super insane what's happening on social media, guys. So if you have any interest in that, I'm going to put a link to that video here. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you in the next video. All right, see ya.